Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum everyone. My name is Faryas Jawal and I'm from BS Biotechnology Department. Today I'm going to share some of useful information about Alzheimer's disease. Now we will discuss step by step. Firstly, introduction, then the chemistry of Alzheimer's disease, current and emerging therapies, then challenging and future direction, and the last one is conclusion. Firstly, the definition of Alzheimer's disease. In Alzheimer's disease, however, abnormal chemical changes cause tau to detach from microtubules and stick to other tau molecules, forming threads that eventually join to form tangles inside neurons. These tangles block the neuron's transport system, which harms the synaptic communication between neurons. The second one is Alzheimer's disease has been identified as a protein misfolding disease or proteopathy caused by the accumulation of abnormally folded amyloid beta protein into amyloid pellicles and tau protein into neurofibrillary tangles in the brain. What is proteopathies? Proteopathies are diseases characterized by the production of aberrant conformers of certain proteins that are misfolded and aggregate in a crystallization like shading mechanism change that lead to a disturbance of their cellular functions and disease. What causes proteopathy? The best known form of such infectious proteopathy is prion disease, which can be transmitted by exposure of a host organism to purify protein in a disease-causing conformation. Current research on Alzheimer's disease. Large genetic changes that contribute to dementia risk identified in May 8, 2023. Scientists have identified new genetic risks for two types of non-Alzheimer's dementia. What is dementia? Dementia is not a specific disease but is rather a general term for the impaired ability to remember, think, or make decisions that interfere with doing everyday activities. Alzheimer's disease is the most common type of dementia. Though dementia mostly affects older adults, it is not a part of normal aging. How dementia is caused? Dementia is caused by damage interferes with the ability of brain cells to communicate with each other. With brain cells, when brain cells cannot communicate normally, thinking, behavior, and feelings can be affected. Latest research, Alzheimer's research in 2022. In November 2022 came the announcement of positive results from the global phase 3 clinical trial of an Alzheimer's drug called lecanemab, showing the rate of cognitive decline in study participants by 27% over 18 months. These are the most encouraging results we have seen for an Alzheimer's treatment to date. What is lecanemab? Lecanemab approved for the treatment of early Alzheimer's disease. Lecanemab has received accelerated approval as a treatment for early Alzheimer's from the US Food and Drug Administration. Alzheimer's Disease Work 2022. The theme for World Alzheimer's Month in September 2022 is known as Dementia Non-Alzheimer's. This is the same them as 2021, but this year it has a special focus on post-diagnosis support. Ratio of Alzheimer's patients in 2022. An estimated 6.5 million Americans aged 65 and older are living with Alzheimer's dementia today. This number could grow to 13.8 million by 2060 by the development of medical breakthroughs to prevent, slow, or cure aging. Epidemiology of Alzheimer's disease. More than 6 million Americans of all ages have Alzheimer's. An estimated 6.7 million Americans aged 65 and older are living with Alzheimer's in 2023. 73% are age 75 or older. About 1 in 9 people aged 65 and older has Alzheimer's. Epidemiology of Alzheimer's disease in Europe. The prevalence of Alzheimer's disease in Europe was estimated at 5.05. The prevalence in men was 3.31 and in women 7.13 and increased with age. The incidence of Alzheimer's disease in Europe was 11.08 per 100 per 1,000 person years. Prevalence of Alzheimer's disease in Pakistan. According to the Alzheimer's Association, approximately 850,000 people were living with dementia in Pakistan in 2015. This number is projected to rise to 1,300,000 by 2030 and 3,600,000 by 2050 if not preventive measures are taken. Prevalence of Alzheimer's age by disease. Age is the greatest of these three risk factors. The percentage of people with Alzheimer's dementia increases dramatically with age. 5% of people aged 65 to 74, 13.1% of people aged 75 to 84, and 33.2% of people aged 85 or older have Alzheimer's dementia. See prevalence action. Now you can see the Alzheimer's grad. How much is all? The percentage of Alzheimer's is the highest. Risk factors for Alzheimer's disease. The risk of developing Alzheimer's or vascular dementia appears to be increased by many conditions that damage the heart and blood vessels. These include heart disease, diabetes, stroke, high blood pressure, and high cholesterol. Work with your doctor to monitor your heart health and treat any problem that arise. Three modifiable risk factors for Alzheimer's disease. It had been estimated that around 40% of dementia cases may be result of 12 key modifiable risk factors. High blood pressure, smoking, diabetes, obesity, lack of physical activity, poor diet, high alcohol consumption, and the last one is low levels of cognitive. Genetic risks of Alzheimer's disease. In most cases, Alzheimer's does not have a single genetic cause. Instead, it can be influenced by multiple genes in combination with lifestyle and environmental factors. Consequently, a person may carry more than one gene or group of genes that can either increase or reduce the risk of Alzheimer's. Now we will see major genetic risk factors for Alzheimer's. APOE4 is the first this gene identified and remains the gene with strongest impact on research risk. Researchers estimate that between 40 to 65% of people diagnosed with Alzheimer's have the APOE4 gene. It is one of three common forms of the APO gene. The others are APOE2 and APOE3. What is APOE4? It is the strongest risk factor gene for Alzheimer's disease. Although inheriting APOE4 does not mean a person will definitely develop that disease. The study suggests that dementia may be caused by lipid imbalance in brain cells. What is APOE2? APOE2 is associated with extreme human as well as with decreased risk of Alzheimer's disease. In the area of cognition, there is evidence that the E2 allele is protective against declines. E2 allele is protective against declines in episodic memory function. However, much remains unknown about the protective effect of APOE2. What is APOE3? APOE3 is the most common genotype. It is associated with normal lipid metabolism, thus may not have genetic impact on the risk of developing cardiovascular disease. APOE4 is found in nearly a quarter of the population and is associated with an increased risk of atherosclerosis. Is Alzheimer's genetic? Having a parent, brother, or sister with Alzheimer's increases your risk, but does not mean you will develop Alzheimer's. Biggest risk of Alzheimer's. At which age is Alzheimer's most at risk? Age is the best risk for Alzheimer's as it is for most more type of dementia. This means that a person is more likely to get Alzheimer's as they get older. Above the age of 65, a person risk of developing Alzheimer's doubles about every 5 years. Strongest genetic risk factors for Alzheimer's disease. Researchers have found just several genes that increase the risk of Alzheimer's. APOE4 is the first risk gene identified and remains the gene with strongest impact on risk. Researchers estimate that between 40 to 65% of people diagnosed with Alzheimer's have the APOE4. The second one, the chemistry of Alzheimer's disease. The concept of brain chemistry. Brain chemistry is the sum of all the chemical messaging that takes place in the brain, which allows it to carry out its daily functions such as generating movement, speaking, thinking, listening, regulating the system of the body, and countless others. Four types of brain chemistry: serotonin, dopamine, endorphin, and oxytocin. What is serotonin? Serotonin is a chemical that carries messages between nerve cells in the brain and throughout your body. Serotonin play a key role in such body functions as mood, sleep, digestion, nausea, wound healing, bone health, blood clotting, and sexual desire. What is dopamine? Dopamine is a chemical released in the brain that makes you feel good. Having the right amount of dopamine is important both for your body and your brain. Dopamine helps nerve cells to send messages to each other. Is dopamine a hormone? Dopamine is a type of neurotransmitter and hormone. It plays a role in many important body functions, including movement, memory, and playable reward and motivation. High or low level of dopamine are associated with several mental health and neurological diseases. How do you increase dopamine? Exercises regularly, eat protein, reduce saturated fat consumption, pay attention to gut health, get enough sleep, listen listen to music you enjoy. What is endorphins? Endorphins are chemicals your body releases when it feels pain or stress. They are released during pleasurable activities such as exercise, massage, eating, and sex too. Endorphins help relieve pain, reduce stress, and improve your sense of well-being. What does endorphins do? Endorphins are chemicals your body releases when it feels pain or stress. They are released during pleasurable activities such as exercise, massage, eating, and sex too. What is oxytocin? Oxytocin both stimulates the muscles of the uterus to contract and boosts the production of prostaglandins, which also increases uterine. What does oxytocin do in love? When you hug or kiss a loved one, your pituitary gland releases oxytocin. This is especially important for pair bonding like in romantic relationships as it elevates your mood and make you feel more attached to your romantic partner. Why is oxytocin called love? As oxytocin is associated with trust, several arousal and relationship buildings, it's sometimes referred to as the love hormones. Oxytocin's level also increase when you are hugging someone and when you are experiencing an orgasm. Neurotransmitter. The human brain contains an estimated 86 billion neurons. Those trillions of brain cells communicate by passing chemical messages at the synapse. The small gap between cells in a process called neurotransmitter transmission. Those chemical messages are unique molecules called neurotransmitters. What are the two main neurotransmitters? Two neurotransmitters seems to play a role in Alzheimer's disease, acetylcholine and glutamate. What is acetylcholine? Acetylcholine is an organic compound that functions in the brain and body of many types of animals as a neurotransmitter. Its name is derived from its chemical structure. It is an ester of acetic acid and choline. Parts in the body that use or are affected by acetylcholine are referred by as cholinergic. Acetylcholine activates muscles and helps with earlier short-term memory and learning. Individuals with AD have low levels of ACH. Levels of neurotransmitters. Levels of one neurotransmitter, acetylcholine, are particularly low in the brain of people with Alzheimer's disease. Over time, different areas of the brain shrink. The first areas usually affected are responsible for memories. In more unusual form of Alzheimer's disease, different areas of brain are affected. Effects of neurotransmitters. Neurofibrillary tangles. In healthy neurons, stop normally binds to and stabilizes microtubules. In Alzheimer's disease, however, abnormal chemical changes cause straw to detach from microtubules and stick to other tau molecules, forming threads that eventually join to form tangles inside neurons. Role of acetylcholine in Alzheimer's disease. Acetylcholine, a neurotransmitter secreted by cholinergic neurons, is involved in signal transduction related to memory and learning ability. Alzheimer's disease, a progressive and commonly diagnosed neurodegenerative disease, is caused by memory and cognitive decline and behavioral disorders. What is neurodegenerative disease? Neurodegenerative disease occurs when nerve cells in the brain or peripheral nervous system lose function over time and ultimately die. Amyloid beta protein and its role in Alzheimer's. The amyloid beta peptide is a critical initiator that triggers the progression of Alzheimer's disease via accumulation and aggregation, of which the process may be caused by alpha beta overproduction or retribulation clearance. Here you can see the diagrammatic structure of alpha beta. What is amyloidogenic pathway? In amyloidogenic pathway, neurotoxic AP peptides are released after sequential cleavage of ABP by beta and gamma secretases and further accumulate into oligomeric aggregates. What is non-amyloidogenic pathway? In the non-amyloidogenic pathway, ABP is cleaved eventually by alpha secretases. In the amyloid genetic pathway, neurotoxic alpha beta peptides are released after sequential cleavage of APP by beta and gamma secretases and further accumulate in oligomeric aggregates. Role of Alzheimer's beta in amyloid beta in Alzheimer's. The underlying pathological cause of Alzheimer's disease has been postulated to be an excess of amyloid beta, which aggregates into toxic fibrillary deposit within the axonal space of the brain, thereby disrupting neuronal and synaptic function and eventually leading to neural degeneration and dementia. Then, effect of amyloid beta. Amyloid beta is a prime suspect for causing cognitive defects during the early phases of Alzheimer's disease. Experiments in AD mouse models have shown that soluble oligomeric clusters of alpha beta degrade synapses and impair memory function. What is degrade synapses? Transport physically removes the neurotransmitter molecule from the synaptic cleft. Degradation breaks down the neurotransmitter molecule by enzyme activity. Neurotransmitters can be degraded by the enzymes in the synapse. What is tau protein? The tau protein is predominantly found in brain cells. Among top multiple functions in healthy brain cells, a very important one in stabilization of the internal microtubules. Tau is a small protein with a short name but a larger reputation because of its association with multiple brain cells. You can see this image of the tau protein accumulated with the brain cells. Tau in biochemistry. Tau represents the subunit protein of the one of the major hallmarks of Alzheimer's disease, AD, the neurofibrillary tangles, and is therefore of major interest as an inductor of disease mechanism. The causes of Alzheimer's disease. Alzheimer's disease is thought to be caused by the normal buildup of proteins and in around brain cells. One of the protein involved is called amyloid, deposits of which form pellicles around brain cells. The other protein is called tau, deposits of which form tangles within brain cells. You can see this difference of Alzheimer's and dementia. Alzheimer's is a specific brain disease that accounts for 60 to 80% of dementia cases. Alzheimer's is a type of dementia, and Alzheimer's is a cause of dementia. Dementia is a general term for the symptoms for decline in memory, reasoning, or other thinking skills. Tau protein and its roles in Alzheimer's. Tau protein in the brains of people with Alzheimer's disease are misfolding and abnormally shaped. The normal tau protein form parts of a structure called microtubule. One of the functions of microtubule is to help transport nutrients and other important substances from one part of the nerve cells to another. Causes. In Alzheimer's disease, however, abnormal chemical changes cause tau to detach from microtubules and stick to other tau molecules, forming threads that eventually join to form tangles inside neurons. These tangles block the neuron's transport system, which harms the synaptic communication between neurons. Treatment for tau protein. The most advanced strategy for the treatment of human tauopathies remains immunotherapy, which has already reached the clinical stage of drug development. The tau vaccines or humanized antibodies target a variety of tau species either in the intracellular or extracellular species. What is humanized antibodies? Humanized antibodies or antibodies from non-human species whose protein sequences have been modified to increase their similarity to antibody variants produced naturally in humans. The process of humanization is usually applied to monoclonal antibodies development for the administration to humans. Oxidative stress. There is overwhelming evidence that the brain tissue in AD patients is exposed to oxidative stress during the course of the disease. Since oxidative stress is characterized by an imbalance in radical production of reactive oxygen species and antioxidative defense, both are considered to have a major role in the process of age-related neurodegeneration and cognitive decline. Sources of the oxidative stress. You can see mitochondrial uncoupling and respiratory burst. Effects of the oxidative stress at the molecular level, at the marker, and the cellular level. Evidence of oxidative stress in AD is manifested through high levels of oxidized proteins, advanced glycation and products, lipid preoxidation and products formation of toxic species such as preoxides, alcohols, aldehydes, free carbonyls, ketones, cholesterol, and oxidative modification in nuclear and mitochondrial DNA. Age-related memory impairments and correlate with a decrease in brain and plasma antioxidants defense mechanism, an important aspect of the antioxidant defense system in the lower molecular weight, reducing equivalent glutathione, which is responsible for the endogenous redox potential in the cell. The most important function of glutathione is to denote electrons to ROS and by doing to the circumvent them. Intracellular glutathione concentration decreases with age in the different animal models, and it also decreases in age mammalian brain regions, including hippocampus. That decrease in GSH leads to a situation where the rate of ROS production exceeds the antioxidant ability, generating a situation that favors oxidative stress. A further reason for oxidative stress is caused by an imbalance among the radical deoxygenase enzymes in AD. Inflammations in Alzheimer's disease. Inflammation clearly occurs in pathologically vulnerable regions of the Alzheimer's disease brain, and it does so with the full complexity of the local peripheral inflammatory responses. What is vulnerable personality disorder? Pathological vulnerable is a form of narcissism that is characterized by feelings of insecurity, low self-esteem, and hypersensitivity to criticism. Pathological narcissism involves maladaptive efforts to regulate the self, and it's conceptualized by the two key features: narcissistic grandiosity and narcissistic vulnerability. Prior research have found that narcissism is associated with poor functions over the long term, especially interpersonal functioning. How does inflammation cause Alzheimer's disease? A current hypothesis is that inflammatory activity in the brain promotes AD by increasing the production of amyloid, killing healthy neurons, and ultimately reducing micrological cells' ability to remove amyloid molecules. Can brain inflammation cause Alzheimer's? The findings, which were published March 2 in Alzheimer's and Dementia, provide evidence that brain inflammation is a key neuropathological pathway of interest in cognitive loss associated with Alzheimer's disease. You can see this inflammation causes Alzheimer's. Front and emerging therapies. Acetylcholinesterase inhibitors and their mechanism of action. Acetylcholinesterase inhibitors, also often called cholinesterase inhibitors, inhibit the enzyme acetylcholinesterase from breaking down the neurotransmitter and acetylcholine into choline and acetate therapy, increasing both the level and duration of action of acetylcholine in the central nervous system autonomy. What is cholinesterase? Cholinesterase is an enzyme that helps your nervous system work that way it should. Certain toxic chemical in the environment can interfere with this enzyme and affect your nervous system. These chemicals include organophosphate and cerbamates. They are most often found in insecticides used in fields. How do acetylcholinesterase inhibitors work in Alzheimer's? Cholinesterase inhibitor drugs inhibit ACH activity, maintain ACH level by decreasing its breakdown rate. Therefore, they boost cholinergic neurotransmitter in forebrain regions and compensate for the loss of functioning brain cells. Which drug is an acetylcholinesterase inhibitors for Alzheimer's disease? 3-CHG inhibitors are commonly prescribed from the sympathetic treatment of AD. The acetylcholinesterase selective inhibitors donepezil and glutamine, and the dual ACHG and butyrylcholinesterase inhibitor rivaroxaban. What is donepezil? Donepezil is used to treat dementia, memory loss, and mental changes associated with mild, moderate, or severe Alzheimer's disease. Donepezil did not cure Alzheimer's disease, and it will not stop the disease from getting worse. However, it can improve thinking ability in some patients. What is glutamine? Lintamine is in class of medications that is calculin inhibitors. It works by increasing the amount of central certain natural substance in the brain that is needed for memory and thought. Lintamine may improve the ability to think and remember, or slow the loss of these abilities in people who have AD. NMDA receptor antagonists and their mechanism of action. Competitive NMDA antagonists and non-competitive antagonists. Competitive NMDA antagonists bind directly to glutamate site of the NMDA receptor to inhibit the action of glutamate. Non-competitive antagonists block the NMDA-associated ion channel in a use-dependent manner. Other sites on the NMDA receptor susceptible to antagonism are the glycine site and the cholamine site. Now we will move forward to what is the proposed mechanism of action for NMDA receptor antagonists in Alzheimer's disease. Low dose NMDA potentially activated synaptic NMDAR and stimulated the extracellular signal regulated kinase CRB BDNF pro survival signaling, while higher doses progressively activated increasing amount of extrasynaptic NMDAR along the synaptic NMDR and triggered cell death program. Most popular NMDA receptor antagonists. Kitaset. Kitaset is a receptor acting non-narcotic non-butyrate agent for anesthetic used in cats. Ketamine is the medication Kitaset. Ketamine medication is a dissociative anesthetic used medically for induction and maintenance of anesthesia. It is also used for a treatment of depression or pain management. Beta secretase inhibitors. 5 beta secretase inhibitors as anti-cancer agents. Beta secretase is an essential AP for the formation of myelin sheaths in peripheral nervous cells. The transmembrane proteins contains an active site made of 2-aspartate residues is in extracellular protein domain and may act as dimer. Role of beta secretase in Alzheimer's disease. The beta secretase, widely known as beta-side amyloid precursor protein cleaving enzymes, initiates for the production of toxic amyloid beta that plays a crucial early part in Alzheimer's disease pathogenesis. Definition of gamma secretase inhibitors. 1. Gamma secretase inhibitors are a class of small molecule inhibitors that, as the name implies, prevent the cleavage of gamma secretase substrates. A number of GSIS were developed after gamma secretase was identified as an enzyme responsible for the accumulation of beta amyloid in Alzheimer's disease. Gamma secretase inhibitors in Alzheimer's disease. Gamma secretase is a protein complex responsible for cutting the transmembrane domain of the amyloid beta protein precursor to form the amyloid beta protein and aggregation prone product that accumulates in the brain in Alzheimer's disease. Anti-amyloid beta monoclonal antibodies. Antibodies that detect beta amyloid can be used in several scientific applications, including immunohistochemistry, Western blot, ELICA, immunocytochemistry, and immunoprecipitation. These antibodies target beta amyloid in human, mouse, rat, non-human, primate, and porcine samples. Our beta amyloid polyclonal, monoclonal, recombinant monoclonal, and recombinant polyclonal antibodies are developed in rabbit, mouse, goat, and sheep. These antibodies have been verified by relative expression, cell treatment, knockdown, and knockout to confirm specificity to beta amyloid. Find the beta amyloid antibody that fits your needs choose from one of 54 beta amyloid antibodies, which have been validated in experiments with 424 publicants and 277 images featured in our data gallery. Gross primary antibodies for VB flow, IHC, ICC, IF, ELICA, IP, and other applications. Antibodies with advanced verification data have been validated for specificity to ensure that the antibody bind to the antigen stated. If you cannot find the antibody you are looking for, contact us today to develop custom antibodies for specific target species and applications. Neurotrophic factors and stem cell therapies. Neurotrophic factors and stem cell therapies are the two promising approaches being explored for the treatment of Alzheimer's disease. Neurotrophic factors. Neurotrophic factors are a group of proteins that support the growth, survival, and function of neurons. In Alzheimer's disease, there is a progressive level of neurons, particularly in areas of the brain involved in memory and cognition. Therefore, the administration of neurotrophic factors aim to promote neuronal growth, protect existing neurons, and enhance synaptic. Can stem cell therapy help in Alzheimer's disease? Stem cell therapy has emerged as a promising treatment for Alzheimer's disease, with numerous studies suggesting that it can improve cognitive function and reduce the symptoms of the disease. Alternative therapies and the lifestyle modifications. What are the alternative treatments for Alzheimer's disease? Acupuncture, chiropractic, and neuropathy are some of the most familiar forms. Good evidence indicates that some non-pharmacological therapies such as music therapy, aromatherapy, pet therapy, and massage may be beneficial to people with Alzheimer's. Alternative therapies, alternative disease and treatment medications. Donepezil, glantamine, rivastigmine, memantine, and donepezil. Donepezil, glantamine, rivastigmine are cholinesterase inhibitors, and memantine and donepezil NMDA antagonists. Lifestyle modifications, definition in simple words. Lifestyle modification involves alternating long-term habits, typically of eating or physical activity, and maintaining the new behavior for months or years. Lifestyle modification can be used to treat a range of diseases, including obesity. What is lifestyle modification for Alzheimer's? Goals of Goal 6 of the National Plan to Address Alzheimer's Disease promotes health behaviors such as increasing physical activity